All right, welcome everybody. This is Boogie Nights number 8. The first time we actually broadcast on a Monday because we're now going to a 2 times a week schedule. So we're doing a bit of a different format on the Mondays where we focus more on recommending films rather than talking about topics around films. And today I'm joined again by Ivo Antonio and Rosie Moreland. Sorry, and Rosie Moreland, who was a producer on the Ipanema file and is also joining us to give her opinions on films. So welcome both of you.
Thank
Hello,
you.
how you doing? You got some bad echo over on your end.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, real bad.
Oh,
Maybe we can't do this. Maybe I need to go mute.
yes. Um, that's all right. Sorry,
So,
we're still working out the technical details. You can just unmute when you start talking, and I'll mute. Yeah, okay, great. So sorry for that. We're back on it now.
okay.
So welcome both of you again. Let's just get started, and we're just going to talk about the 5 films that we each of us recommend, and talk a little bit about those films. So, Antonio, you want to kick us off?
Yes, I can totally do that. Now, I actually had, because I didn't know how we were doing the list, so I did 5 lists.
Okay.
Uh, one of them is old movies, and one of them is new movies to watch,
Mhm.
or newer movies. So, which did you want to hear first?
Well, in that case, let's just do on your side, let's do one of the old, one of the new, because I was gonna do basically sort of, we would just go around and suggest a film each of us. But if you have 2 lists, just do 2 of them, and we'll do it that way.
Okay. So to start it off on both lists, for the old, I have the 1981 film Possession. That's by Andrei Zawalski, I believe.
Right?
Fantastic film set in the Cold War Eastern Europe
Okay.
with Sam Neill giving a fantastic performance opposite his co-star. The plot is absolutely insane. Isabelle Adjani, who plays the yes, that it's a really disturbing movie, really fun, and I think people would have a good time with that. As far as older horror movies go, that you may not be aware of, that's is definitely on the obscure side, and it's definitely one of the better, lesser known horror movies out there.
Right
Uh,
on.
as far as a new one goes, I do the 2008 film The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Oh, I'm sorry, there is no "and" there. So this is a South Korean retread of the original Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's done by Ji Woon Kim, who has done quite a few other big South Korean films like A Tale of Two Sisters and A Bittersweet Life. And it stars quite a few big names in South Korean cinema, namely Kon Ho-son, who is in damn near everything, and Byun-hun Lee, who is actually he actually co-starred opposite Min Sik Choi in I Saw the Devil. So you've seen
Okay.
him before as well if you're a fan of South Korean cinema. It's a really good reimagining of the westerns. I've actually seen a few movies like these where South Asian countries retread this genre. Be it this one, there's also a Chinese one that does similar things, and there's Tears of the Black Tiger, I believe, which is a Thai movie. So a lot of Asian filmmakers have been going back and doing the Western genre, and I just think this is a fantastic example of that. The plot is really gripping, and what they do with the story, I feel, is amazing, and it's also very uniquely Ji Woon Kim, who I said before is he's the equivalent of M. Night Shyamalan if M. Night Shyamalan was actually good. In his twist endings. I mean, the twist ending in this movie is fantastic, and it really throws you for a loop and kind of makes you rethink the whole dynamic the movie was going for.
Cool. Well, I haven't seen any of those. Rosie, have you seen any of those?
No, I haven't seen any of them actually, but The Good, the Bad, and the Weird sounds really great, and I'm a really big fan of Korean films in general. I love the perspective. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Well, your first film?
My first film.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm actually going to start similar part of the world with The Eel, which is a Japanese film from 1997, uh, which I actually got bought on video for Christmas by my dad one year, which is a bit random back in the day when you'd still get VHS for Christmas. And it's a really interesting story about a man who kills his wife in a sort of jealousy and goes to prison and makes friends with an eel and spends his time talking to this eel and then gets out of prison, and it's all about kind of his readjustment with the rest of like getting back into the real world. And the way it's shot is really beautiful. It's all really kind of muted. You really kind of get a sense of eel from it. It's really strange, but it is totally true. And yeah, I'd recommend that definitely if you sort of like quite subtle, interesting, atmospheric, slightly black humor type films. It's great.
Kind of sounds like a freaky castaway.
A wee bit. I don't know. It's kind of
I mean, is he like isolated with the eel for a great period of time while he's in prison, or?
not really. I mean, he just sort of talks to the eel when they're together. It's. I mean, it's more about what he kind of learns from himself by talking to the eel and how he kind of applies that to when he gets back into the real world and he's confronted with situations which are kind of similar to his life before he went into jail and how he kind of changes his reactions. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Sounds like it.
Anyway, I'll pass the mic back.
Okay, so my first film, and I keep coming back to this. I always keep recommending this, and especially because I can't find anybody who really has seen this film, and it's called Hurly Burly. Even on YouTube, I can find only one single review on it by a really old lady, definitely over 60, probably over 70, who did just a straight-to-camera review on it. But for the rest, I haven't found many people that have seen it. And it's a film based on a stage play, actually. So it's a theater piece, but they made a film of it, and it stars Sean Penn and Kevin Spacey. Really great roles for them, but besides those two, my favorite actor in that and my favorite character by far is the character of Phil, played by Chaz Palminteri. And it's absolutely fantastic, his performance and the way that he sort of like his mind works as the character in that film. For the rest, it's pretty much kind of like a bit of a star-studded cast. It has like Sean Penn, Kevin Spacey, Robin Wright, Chaz Palminteri, Gary Shandling, Anna Paquin, and Meg Ryan in it. But it's all just really well, like unknown. It's a pretty rough story about some Hollywood producers that dip a little bit too much into the cocaine. Um, and that's what the whole film is about. It's just one big long cocaine rant, but it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's my my first suggestion here, and I'm just gonna quickly pull up the image for it so that you know people will have that in their mind. So maybe one day more people will see it. That'd be great. Because I'm a big advocate of this film. It's a bit of a small picture, but that's what it looks like, and it's really worth seeing for sure. So yeah, that's what it is for me. And again, I can't stress enough. Like the character of Phil is absolutely fantastic. It has to be seen. almost to be believed that like that kind of dialogue writing exists and it exceeds anything I've ever seen before. So we'll go back to you, Antonio.
Sounds like a very interesting film.
It's definitely worth it, yeah.
Okay. So for my old recommendation, I will do a Japanese new wave film, since I definitely want more people to check out this period of time. The one in question is The Face of Another, a 1963 sci-fi drama by Hiroshi Teshigahara. And it stars Tetsuya Nakai, who's kind of looked at as like the Laurence Olivier of Japan in terms of acting ability. He's right up there with Toshiro Mifune. The movie is it's in that genre of movies where people do like facial well, that's not it. It's the one right up. Yeah. Yeah, you were that was an image of the bad sleep. No, that wasn't the bad sleep well. That was a different one. Anyway, Face of Another. It's one of those weird plastic surgery movies, kind of like The Skin I Live In, or what was that German one? I forgot. But in it, Tetsuya Nakai has a horrible disfigurement on his face to begin with at the start of the film. He was in some kind of an accident, and it's basically taken his face off. And so this doctor has this bizarre interest in the idea of putting a completely prosthetic face on Tetsuya Nakai. And they figure out, while they're coming up with the idea of how to do it, that he could give him another face that isn't his, allowing Tetsuya to go out and essentially live a double life. And there's this whole weird kind of question as to the power dynamic between yourself and your double, and what happens, does one eventually take control of the other, or how does that work? And there's also a lot of crazy visuals in it that's very distinctive of that type of cinema. So that's a good one. As far as newer recommendations, I'll do a nice World War II film that people should check out. This is the 2000 film Devils on the Doorstep. It's written, directed, and starring Wang Jiang, a pretty famous Chinese actor. He did one of the other Western kind of southeastern reimagining, Let the Bullets Fly, so you might have seen him from there. But this film is a World War II film. He's a poor Chinese farmer, and they wind up capturing 2 Japanese soldiers. They get brought to him in the middle of the night by the Chinese resistance, and so he has to watch over them for a period of a year, and then give them back to the people. And so this creates a whole bunch of intrigue as they decide what to do with these Japanese soldiers, and it's a real interesting film, and it actually got banned in mainland China for a while because it gave such a it gave a more sympathetic view of the Japanese during that period of time, a more nuanced kind of view of it, which is something you don't often see from the Chinese World War II films, because they typically use that period of time for propaganda purposes,
right?
To drum up fear and hatred of the Japanese over past crimes. And so the film's good in that respect. It's black and white, so it looks gorgeous, and the story is very, very gripping, and it's also hilarious. It's a really good comedy, and it does have some serious moments in there too that they really get.
Oh, that sounds good. Devil's on the Doorstep. Rosie.
Okay, well, my second choice is a Swedish film from 2013 called Kitchen Stories. And this is one that a friend recommended to me a long time ago, and it took me a while to get around to watching it. And when I did, I was like, why didn't I watch this sooner? It is so brilliant. It's such a fascinating concept. So it's about um, Sweden, and I think it's like kitchen manufacturers, and they conducted a survey of housewives on how they use their kitchens. And they did this by sort of installing a person in the corner of the room and like observing, basically. And this time round, they decided to actually look at single older men living alone. And so they pair this chap, you can see on the screen, this chap in a high chair, and he sits in that chair pretty much the whole film in the corner of this guy's kitchen. And it's just brilliant, because the guy doesn't want him to be there. He really, really doesn't want him to be there. And one of the things that I learned when I was researching this is actually throughout the film, the two characters, one of them speaks Norwegian and the other one speaks Swedish. And they speak that to each other the whole way through. At no point do they speak in the same language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Absolutely fascinating film. Really, yeah, another sort of slightly quiet film, but at the same time, I mean, I found myself laughing out loud at times because it's just so absurd. But yeah, Kitchen Stories, really, really great film.
Aren't Norwegian and Swedish pretty similar linguistically, though?
Yeah, they are. I've got a few friends who are Swedish. I think it's Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian are very similar. And like the word for thank you in all three is tack, or similar.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that they can generally understand each other. I think there's just a couple of words and phrases. I think it's more the intonation. And then of course you've got Finland, which is totally different. But...
Yeah, they have a completely different
yeah.
base. And I think the Danish also is a little trickier because they do different pronunciations.
It's a bit more German, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's I like Scandinavian film. My next one, actually, is another Scandinavian film.
Oh, nice.
Anyway.
I bet you're a big Mads Mikkelsen fan.
I'm not very good with, like, remembering names of people. This is my terrible thing. I probably would be if I looked him up. Anyway, should we pass back over to Danny, see what his next film is?
I think so. I think it's time for his recommendation.
So my next film is a film that, and I have this a lot because coming from the sort of VCR era, sometimes you would start a film or recording late. So I didn't know what it was called for the longest time, and I couldn't find it anywhere because it's pretty obscure as well, and it's a film called Destiny Turns on the Radio. So I missed the first bit where it had the title on it. So for many years I didn't know what it was called. And then I found it a couple of years ago. I was finally able to find it somewhere. And it is a really strange little film that plays in Vegas, in Las Vegas. Doesn't focus much on the gambling thing, but more about these guys that well, there's this one guy who's sort of just released from prison, and he's coming back to Vegas to find the money from this job that he and a friend did. And it features Quentin Tarantino as Johnny Destiny. He is basically Luck, like Lady Luck, only in the form of Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, wow.
And what I really like about this film is that it has this sort of atmosphere that is very well, it's difficult to describe, but it has a certain atmosphere that is just really smooth, and I really like that. And it's not a very good film in particular, and it's not a great story or anything, but it's a film that's definitely worth seeing, and it has a certain sort of feel-good factor to it without going all into that realm of like maybe an Almost Famous or something, which is like a feel-good film, but it's really, really feel-good. Whereas this film is kind of, it sits somewhere in between. And yeah, I really like it. And I would have to look it up, but one of the actors is well, it has John Belushi in it, doesn't it? Like, and one of the actors from Point Break, and I don't know his name, James LeGros, and I really like him as well. So yeah, that would be mine. I really recommend that one.
Interesting. Now, Tarantino's acting quality in this film, would you say it's Django Unchained levels of acting, or would you say it's closer to like his From Dusk Till Dawn levels of acting?
It isn't particularly great. It's like it's Tarantino acting. So like he has one character and that is himself basically.
Yeah, but I
That's
mean,
what he does.
sometimes he's a lot better at playing that character than others. I mean,
I really like him in this film. I think he gives a better performance than in Pulp Fiction, for instance.
oh, that's good. Yeah. All
Cool.
right. Cool. So my turn then.
Yes.
Okay. So okay. So next ones. For my old recommendation, I have 1953 film The Wages of Fear. Is French film directed by Henry Georges Clouzot, who you might also know as being the guy who did Diabolique, a pretty famous 1955 horror film. In this film, that guy you see there is he's Mario, played by Yves Montand, and they're basically a bunch of French expatriates, people that left France for one reason or another, typically criminal reasons, that are now kind of hiding out in South America. They're in Brazil or one of those countries. The problem is there's no jobs and there really isn't any money, and they didn't have any time to bring money over with them. So they're essentially all broke and kind of like hopeless. And then this opportunity comes up to make a ton of money. What happened is there's this mining company in town, and one of their rigs exploded and burst into flames, and so now they have to take a truck full of nitroglycerin, and they have to drive across these really crappy roads to get to the fire so they can blow up the fire and put it out. And driving nitroglycerin around in a truck is insanely dangerous. The slightest bump caused the whole thing to explode and incinerate you in a second. And so that's where the title, The Wages of Fear, comes in, because it's them kind of battling over their fear of death as the movie progresses and the stakes get higher and higher tension. It's a really gripping narrative. I love the structuring of it. They take a little bit of time before they get to the main event, so you really get to know and care about the characters leading up to that. It's just, it's a fantastic film. It made me wish that Clouzot made more movies, because if he did, I think I would have him up there as one of my favorite directors. But
Right.
because it is a really fucking good movie. So that's the old movie. For the new recommendation, I've actually got what I'll call a series starter, which is something you should watch if you want to if you want to watch a few films in a row, to kind of go down a series, and it would be the Cube series.
Oh yeah.
So you have the first film in 1997, Cube, and then you had the sequel, Hypercube, which came out in 2002, which I would argue is the best film of the series. And then Cube Zero, which was a prequel to everything, in 2004. And I would basically describe them as kind of the smart sci-fi version of Saw. These people wake up with no memories of themselves. They don't even remember their own names. And they are, I think they remember like their first names, and that's it. And they're stuck in this giant cube. It's like a puzzle box, except you're inside of it. And so it's made up of a bunch of cubes inside the cube. And the cubes shift around randomly at different times, so you move around within the cube, the giant cube in your little cube. And like over half the cubes in there are trap cubes. So you'll step in it, and all of a sudden, barbed wire will come out everywhere and kill you. I mean, it's crazy stuff. And so the first one introduced the concept, and unlike other horror films where they kind of go downhill from there, and it just becomes kind of like what happened with the Saw movies, where the first one was really interesting in that you could see yourself escaping some of the traps somewhat. You know, it was insanely difficult, but there were ways you could plan out of it. And then the second one just became ridiculous because the traps got to the point where there's no way you could possibly get out of them. So if you got caught in the situation, your best bet would just be to kill yourself right at the beginning, so you didn't have to die in a terrible manner. Cube, on the other hand, they really built the series from the first one. The first one started off real small. There wasn't anything we knew about it. And then the second one, they built the world out a little bit, and they also expanded on the cube concept drastically by introducing the idea of a hypercube, which is also known as a tesseract, I believe.
Yep.
Which is where they put a cube inside of another cube inside of a cube.
Well, it's a four-dimensional cube.
Yeah. And so within the context of the film, it means that when you're trapped inside of the hypercube, time and space itself are relative. And so you can hop from one cube in another, and you have aged like 50 years.
Right. Now,
And
did you just say that you think Hypercube is the best of the three?
I think Hypercube is the best of the three, yeah. What would you say is the best?
I would say the first one, and then the third one, and then the second one. And it's kind of funny, actually, that you're saying this. And I don't know what you're basing this on, but sort of in the circles I hung around, like Hypercube was kind of considered to be a bit of the joke of them all, you know, like not that great.
Really?
Yeah.
And why didn't y'all like Hypercube?
I don't know. It was just a little bit too, you know, out there.
That's what I liked about it, was that it was out there.
Okay.
I just, because they like took it to the next level, you know, in terms of the concept, and I thought it was really cool seeing, like you jumping from one room to the other, and suddenly, everyone in the room is aged 50 years, and they're all dead, and you have to try to go back to the room that you were in before, where they were still alive, you know.
Sure.
You know, maybe you could say the ending got a little crazy, but I also like that they kept the mystery up with it. Cube Zero, I think, kind of, it was a prequel, and so they managed to go before the first Cube, and they explained a lot of what everything was in the organization that was doing it. But I don't know if we necessarily needed that information. I think the mysterious angle of who the hell is putting people in these cubes was good enough.
It was a bit weird, the third one, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
And the first one's great, you know, great characters and everything. I like the way Hypercube expanded on it. So.
Okay.
And that would be that'd be a good series starter. So you could do a big marathon of all three of them if you wanted to. They're just really quality horror films. The effects are great, and the concept is really interesting. And I don't think they go too over the top with it. Although apparently some people disagree with me on that.
Cool. Rosie.
Okay, my third film, as I sort of hinted before, is another Scandinavian one, this one from Denmark. It's a Lars von Trier from 2006 called The Boss of It All, which I randomly saw at the cinema. Hadn't actually seen any Lars von Trier before, didn't have any idea what it was about. It was just one of those, I'm going to go see a film, The Boss of It All, this might be funny, that. And it's brilliant. It's about a guy who hires an actor to pretend to be the boss to go in and fire everyone in a company. That's kind of the basic premise. And so the whole film is about how long can he keep this up for? You know, when he kind of realizes what he's actually doing. And it's just so dry. It's got that sort of, similar to Kitchener Stories, really kind of dry humor, really kind of subtle but hilarious at the same time, really observational. And another interesting piece of trivia I found out about this film is that Lars von Trier actually used a technique called automatovision when he was filming this, which is basically that all of the shots, all of the movements, all of the angles were randomly selected by a computer. The whole thing is totally randomly shot.
Yeah, Lars von Trier does a lot of crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, it's great. And apparently there were 2 scenes that he shot by himself. He shot the things, and he removed them. He didn't want them to be in the final piece because that would ruin the whole thing. So I was like, that's brilliant. But I didn't realise it at the time, but it does give it this kind of quite slightly unsettling kind of sort of experience. I mean, I suppose it's a little bit like The Office in some kind of ways. It's got that similar kind of vibe, but a lot more toned down. Um, but yeah, really interesting. I need to watch it again now that I know that it was all randomly shot, because I think that's fascinating. But yeah, The Boss of It All, 2006, really funny, interesting film.
Cool. That sounds really interesting. To have it all selected by a computer. That sounds really funny.
Yeah, Von Trier has a lot of gimmicks like that. He also did the Dogma 95 movement, I think, that we talked about at one point. That was also Lars von Trier.
Oh yeah. So my next film is another pretty freaky one called 1.0. It has different titles in different countries, and I can't remember now what the other title was. But 1.0, all written, not numbers, but written in text. 1.0, and it's basically about what would happen if advertisement companies could sort of advertise directly to your brain. So instead of using all the techniques of these days with like pop-up ads and spam and all that stuff, they take it a step further and say what if they could directly inject those thoughts into your brain, and what would happen to you then? And it's really bizarre to see how people basically, slowly turn into these sort of self-advertising machines. It's really freaky. It has really great visuals, and yeah, I really liked it. It made a big impression on me, even though I've never watched it again because I just found it a bit too freaky. But it made a real impression on me, and I thought it was really cool and it was really well done. Has great performances in it. Um, so yeah, I'd really recommend that one. It's another one of those ones that you just don't hear much about um, in any kind of movie reviews or anything. I'm not sure whether or not the director was actually somebody who it's actually directed by two people I see now. Um, yeah, they've got a couple of credits, but nothing big that I can see. So yeah, it's a real indie film, but yeah, it made it onto the shelves of the video store. So, but yeah, I can't see any sort of famous people in it or anything, but still, it's really great, and I'd highly recommend that one.
Sounds like another interesting concept. Kind of reminds me of that Harvey Keitel movie, Death Watch,
Right.
where they have a reality show where they just watch somebody die slowly.
It has that similar sort of vibe, that kind of like maybe you could call it like a small dystopian future or something, like where it's not like a huge the entire world is dystopian kind of thing, but it's just like the people, they're kind of like
The
um
attitudes are just to the point where you wouldn't want to live there.
hmm. Well, I mean, I wouldn't really want to. There's this one scene in it, which it's not really a spoiler, so don't worry. But there's this one scene in it where one of the main guys, like kind of walking through a supermarket, and his advertisement in his brain kicks in, and he just starts like rattling up all the good things about the products on the shelves that he likes that have been sort of programmed in his mind as advertisement. And it's really freaky because you could see one day that kind of becoming true, like the way that advertisement is done on the internet these days, like it's pretty aggressive. So, you know,
Yeah.
and
Those sci-fi films that deal with the whole media type thing along those lines, like that or The Running Man, they always seem to be some of the most like eerie and somewhat accurate films as well.
yeah, cool. Next one.
Spoiler for Death Watch, because the ending is so funny in that. I'll go ahead and I'll spoil it real quick, but it turns out that it's fake. that they were faking it, that she wasn't actually dying, they were just faking it, which is so like reality TV. You
Oh,
know,
totally.
they managed to capture it perfectly even with the twist, and that was like 5 years before Survivor even came out, so
Yeah.
they really predated it. Anyway, on to my recommendations. Okay, so for my old one, this is a. Are you like tearing like bubble wrap back there or something? What are you doing over there?
Nope.
Okay. Anyway, so my first one for my old is the 1974 film Rabid Dogs. I've also seen it listed as Kidnapped. But it's a 1974 film. It was directed by Mario Bava, a very famous giallo film director from Italy,
Right.
who did Black Sunday, Bay of Blood, a lot of films along those lines. This was actually his last film that he ever did, and I don't think it actually got completed until the 90s. There was something happening, it just wound up getting locked up in a vault for like 30 years. But the movie is fantastic. Basically, you've got these three guys who are bank robbers. And in the opening of the film, we see them rob a bank, and they take a woman hostage. And then their car breaks down, and they take a man hostage in his car, a man and his son. And the rest of the movie is basically just these three kidnappers, these bank robbers, the woman, and the father and son driving across Italy trying to escape the law. And I was fascinated by the film because, like I said, the majority of it takes place inside this car. And you think realistically that something like that would get a little boring after a while. You know, there's only so many ways you can film four people in a car. And yet, Bava manages to hold your interest the entire time. The thing is kind of, it runs on like a razor-thin kind of tension line. And it stays high throughout the entire movie. It's got an amazing ending to it that just throws you for a loop. The acting is very well done. It's all around great film, really good.
Cool.
So there's that. For my other one, I will recommend A Field in England. Recent recommendation, I think. It's a 2013 film that is directed by Ben Wheatley, probably one of my favorite directors working out right now. Written by Amy Jump, and it stars. Well, it stars Michael Smiley, Reese Shearsmith, Richard Glover, Peter Ferdinando. And what happens is these guys are during the English Civil War, and three of these guys have escaped from battle, and they wind up wandering into this field where Michael Smiley is, and he's playing this kind of aristocratic occultist type person who's trying to dig up some kind of secret object that will give him unlimited power or something like that, and basically conscripts these guys into his service, forcing them to work for him. And it's a really insane movie. It's so crazy. There's magic mushrooms, and it's black and white, and they're in period clothing, and they talk in period language, you know. And it's done in that very, it's done in that Ben Wheatley style, so you're just dropped, like right in the middle of it. There's no exposition, no nothing. The story, you know, it like opens on an explosion, and then the story's just rolling from there. It's got this insane trip sequence in the middle of the movie where these guys have a mushroom fight, and it's one of the weirdest things you've ever seen. The ending also is incredibly weird, and it opens up a lot of questions as to what exactly the movie's about. Some have theorized that it's kind of that the whole movie is allegorical for the English Civil War, in that the struggles between the protagonist and the antagonist mirrors the the struggles between the what was it the Tories and the Roundheads in that war, or I don't remember, but
Maybe.
between the two sides. So yeah, really good film, and I'd recommend it.
Cool. Rosie.
Well, I only had 3 films I'd thought of, but I've got a couple of others, just films off of Indie Boogie that I really like. So I thought I'd mention those. So the first one I'm going to talk about is At All Costs, which is by a French director, Yann Da, and he made it in 2014 for $8,000. And it is incredibly beautiful. It's like so well shot, and it really kind of takes you into the moment, and it's just it's just really impressive. And it's sort of about a kidnap gone wrong. It's just enthralling. I can't remember exactly how long it is. Like I think it's like 15 minutes or something, maybe.
A bit longer.
Maybe a bit longer, but it's great. And continue my fact mission. Apparently, it was bought by Anthony Zucker, the creator and executive producer of CSI. So that's quite cool. But that's a film that we have on Indie Boogie, free to view, and it's excellent. Definitely recommend that. Have a watch, and I reckon this guy's probably going to do some more exciting stuff in the future. This is what he could do already. So.
Yes, I remember watching that film as well on Indie Boogie. It is really great. It's really amazing to see that that can be done for as little as $8,000. Was it? Yeah. Okay. It's a really great film. My next one is a film called Spun, and it stars Jason Schwartzman, and but in a role that I really like him in. I'm not a fan of him at all, but this one I really liked, and it's basically about I guess you could call him a couple of like speed freaks. Like it's about this sort of group of people that their only obsession is speed, and that's completely what the film is about. And also the title Spun. They kind of reference that as being sort of wired or something. And it's a film with a lot of atmosphere and a lot of good performances. My favorite performer in there is definitely Mickey Rourke, and he has the character he plays is called the cook. So he makes all the stuff that they use, and he's the cook. And he's just great. He's just great in that role. And he has an incredibly cool sort of weird interlude in the film where he just stands in front of this flag, and then just it's kind of like there's this famous scene in a film with a general standing in front of a flag and doing this whole monologue, and it's kind of referencing that. And John Leguizamo is also in there, which who I really like as an actor. I think everybody kind of like loves and respects him. He's the guy that got away with doing the Super Mario film and still be cool after that. So that's quite something. So that's my second to last recommendation. Yeah, a tour de force of grunge atmosphere is what it's described as, and I think that's a very good description for the film. I've watched that film many times, to be honest, because I really wanted to delve deeper into it and see. Because it's a film you could make, like if you get a couple of $1,000 together, you could make this film, and that's what the amazing thing about it is. You couldn't get these actors for that kind of money, but you can definitely make this film. It's not big sets, it's not lots of expenses, it's just a story told very well. So back to you, Antonio.
Yes. So finally, to kick off my last two, for my old recommendation, this will be another series starter, and this one is one of the best series starters.
You muted yourself.
Oh, did I mute myself?
Yeah.
Snap. So the recommendation for the old is a series starter, and a really good one at that. The Tale of Zatoichi, 1962 Kenji Mizumi film, starring Shintaro Katsu as the blind swordsman Zatoichi. This film, which was itself inspired by, I believe it was, what was it, The Blind Menace? This film went on to basically spawn a series of somewhere around 27 feature-length films with Shintaro Katsu running throughout the 70s, 60s and 70s rather. There was also a TV show that started up in the 80s, a Zatoichi TV show, and then they did a movie based off the TV show, all of them starring Shintaro Katsu. And also, more recently, in the 2000s, Zatoichi got remade by, what's the guy's name? Takashi Kitano, who's a very famous Japanese director. And so the first one, I would say, is really good. It's kind of up there in terms of some of the other big samurai films that you know and love in terms of artistic merit. It's definitely not Sword of Doom good or any of the Kurosawa samurai films, with maybe the exception of Sanjuro. You know, I put it up around there, or Sword of the Beast. It's really good, black and white. It's got these gambling sequences that are fantastic. I love them. That's a stalwart of the Zatoichi series. His sword play is fantastic, although it is very quick, so you don't get very many protracted battles. Although in this one there is a big kind of gang war at the end of it, so you get a little bit more than normal. And the tale there is a lot more deep than it is in some of the Zatoichi films to follow. A lot of the ones after this are very good, but they're much simpler in plot. They're just kind of like, oh, you know, Zatoichi's wandered along and he gets into this mess, and now he's got to get out of it. But in terms of a series, if you really like the character in this first film, then you can go on and you have so much material to keep watching. And even though the plots may not be as good, Shintaro Katsu is definitely still as good. And the character only gets better and better the more you watch him. He's such an interesting kind of guy. So
Cool. And the new one?
yes, the new one would be the 2008 film Bronson.
I haven't seen that yet. I heard good things.
So good. It's directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who's done a few other pretty big things. He's a Danish filmmaker. He did Drive more recently, and then Only God Forgives. Another film he was big for was Valhalla Rising, which I didn't get, really. But Bronson is absolutely fantastic, and I wish Tom Hardy would do more characters like this, because he's absolutely insane. It's based off of a real-life British prisoner who was very famous just for the amount of trouble he caused in the system. It's basically that. It's a telling of that guy's story, but it's done in a very unique and interesting way, because they look at the idea of him being slightly off-kilter mentally and that influencing the narrative. So it has a very, I guess you could say, schizophrenic type of narrative delivery in that sense. And it's really good. The fight scenes are fantastic when you do get them. Tom Hardy is great. The character is really brings you into the movie, unlike a lot of other Nicholas Winding Refn films where the protagonist is just this really quiet guy that never speaks the whole time and just kind of looks, you know, apathetic at everything. Bronson is very animated, and so it's a very refreshing film in that sense from Nicholas Winding Refn. And I love it, and it makes me wish that, because they've been putting Tom Hardy in the straight roles, you know, the very kind of, you know, standard leading man roles. But I wish they would give him some off-the-wall villain to do what he did with Bronson with, because not a lot of people saw Bronson, And I think if they did, they'd be demanding the same thing.
Yeah, well, I think I'm definitely gonna watch this one. I've heard good things about it, and I saw an interview with the actual guy that it was based on.
Yeah, and he
And
was pretty happy.
sorry?
I remember him being pretty happy with the movie when he saw
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was, yeah. Rosie.
Alright, my last one is another indie boogie short film called Lunchtime, and it's by Andrew Barry, and it's just again a really interesting, fun short. This one's a lot, well, I wouldn't say it's a lot lighter in tone than At All Costs, but it certainly starts out a lot lighter in tone. And it's basically someone sitting down in a park to have their lunch, and this whole scene unfolds before them, and it's really fantastic, really unexpected. I'm not going to ruin the end, but I thought it was great. I sort of gasped at the end. I couldn't believe they'd actually done that. I thought it was really inventive, and it must have been so much fun to make. So, yep, there we go. That's my final recommendation, which is Lunchtime by Andrew Barry, 2014.
Yeah, I remember that film as well.
You gonna unmute yourself?
Again, like I've seen this film as well, and it's too bad we cannot give away the ending because I had some questions about how they filmed that. Like, again, we can't give it away, so you're just gonna have to go and see it. It's called Lunchtime. You can find it on Indie Boogie or just on Vimeo. But I don't understand how they did that final scene. It's very interesting, you know. Anyways, so for my last film, I actually had on my list The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, until I just realized that I don't actually remember anything about that film except the fact that I really liked it. Like, it's really off the wall, and it stars Peter Weller, and I love Peter Weller, but I don't actually remember much of the story, so I switched around to I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay, the Korean film, and I've talked about it before. And it's about this girl who's convinced that she is a cyborg and that she's losing power. She's draining her battery life basically. And her mission is to regain battery strength and power. So she finds a friend and she sort of convinces him that she's a cyborg and that she needs power, and it's sort of like the entire story develops around that. And as I've always said, I'm not a big fan of the Asian film offerings. Like, I find it sometimes way too freaky. And again, with this film, it is again equally freaky, but for some reason this one just kind of touched me and I really liked it. And it's a film by Chan Wook Park, and I probably pronounced that wrong, but yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she checks into a mental hospital as well, and then the other person is also kind of a psychotic. He's a man who thinks that he can steal people's souls. It's just a really strange film, lots of atmosphere, really beautifully shot, really beautifully shot. And yeah, one of the rare sort of films, Korean films that I really, really like. So that'll be my last recommendation there.
Yeah, and that was Chang Wook Park is one of the big South Korean directors. He did the Old Boy, the Vengeance trilogy,
Oh,
as
really?
it's called. The center one of which is Old Boy, which is the most famous one out of that
Oh.
trilogy. Yeah, and he also did Thirst, which is an amazing vampire movie. If you haven't seen that.
See, I didn't even know that. Like, I just randomly hit on that film and watched it, like, didn't know anything about it.
Yep. So he's one of the big directors over there. He's very good.
Cool. Well, I think that kind of concludes our session of recommendations here. I think it's a good point for us to stop on a Monday and have a bit of reflection on these films. I hope there was some people out there that get something out of this, that possibly find some films that they've never heard of. I think all of the films that were discussed are really great films, so I think it's definitely worth checking them out.
Definitely.
So let's do some promotions here. Like Antonio, you do your stuff here.
Yes. Twitter.com/evilantonio, Facebook.com/TheEvilAntonio. YouTube, you can just search Evil Antonio Reviews, and that should pull up the channel. Or YouTube.com/user/WhatSoundsBest. I'm also on Tumblr at Evil Antonio.
Oh, is that new or just remembered
I've
it?
had it for a long time. I haven't been on it very much, so I've just started to get back on it recently in preparation for the Kickstarter that I'm going to be launching soon.
Cool.
I never get the video done.
Rosie, you want to promote some Twitters as well?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at Boogie Limited, so that's BOOGIELTD, and Fighting Badgers, which is spelled the way it sounds. Both of those Twitter accounts you can follow for all kinds of indie film news, and we're always promoting all the films that we have on Indie Boogie, and if people are looking for, cast and crew and any kind of help to do with indie film, we're there promoting it for all the people on Indie Boogie. So that's good things to follow if you're not following us already.
Yeah. So let me unmute myself. The same goes for me, basically. Like that's the same addresses to follow. You can find us on Facebook as well. We're getting a bit of traction in the Indie Boogie group. Got a Facebook group now, and it's really nice out there. So come and visit us. And we will be back on a Thursday with the normal programming, where we just find a topic and discuss that topic around various films. And then next Monday we'll do another one of these. So until then, we will see you later. Bye bye.